I was going to turn the floor over to Justin, but he seems
Oh,
to be.
sorry. Oh,
Oh, I thought you were taking a dip in the water there, and you were going to come back and you were
I
refreshed.
wish. All I was doing was trying to find my slippers that are under the bed that I'm sitting on.
The
But
bed? Saying you're not the
yeah,
beach.
it's a
How'd
bed.
you get your bed to the beach?
What the
It's a bed
hell?
on the beach. Yeah.
All right, well, let me
It's actually it's
before
a water bed.
it's a water bed. Oh, gotcha.
That works.
I'm going to let Justin talk about a movie here, but before you talk about the movie, do you think you could remind our audience of something important, either of you guys?
Yes, please do not forget to like and subscribe, and if possibly share the videos as well. That'll be much appreciated. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a New Zealand film, my home country from the mid-80s, 1985, called A Quiet Earth. It's not something. It's something I'd heard of before this film, but I'd never actually watched it. And so when I knew what the topic was today, I went and managed to obtain a copy and watched it last night.
Thanks
but
to
thanks to Dwayne Cochran, and I thank you for that. That
our
was great.
producer. Yes.
Our producer. So it's a film that only really did box office in New Zealand at the time in mid-1980s, 1985 film. And it wasn't a lot of money. It was something like $650,000 in New Zealand in terms of box office. So it didn't seem to have a very wide international release at the time, but it's since become a bit of a cult classic. It was voted recently as the 10th best New Zealand film of all time in an online poll in New Zealand. The astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson has named it as one of his favorite sci-fi films of all time. And so it's become a bit of a cult classic and has had positive media coverage and reviews in America as well. So I sort of describe it a bit as even though it's a much earlier film, it's a combination of I Am Legend type concept and Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, because it's to do with an apocalyptic event which is only explained properly as you continue to watch the film. But it starts with Zach, who's played by quite a well-known New Zealand actor at the time, Bruno Lawrence, who wakes up at 6:12 a.m. at a motel in a seaside country area, rural area. And he notices that the clock doesn't move from 6:12 a.m. He can't get any coverage on the radio. He's also, by the way, a research scientist. When he drives into the township, he sees cars sort of stationary on the side of the road or in the middle of the road. He goes to the gas station, puts some gas in his car, but can't find anyone to take his money. The toilet at the restroom at the gas station is locked or engaged, but when he looks under the door, there's no one behind the door. So he wonders what's going on. He drives into Auckland, the downtown Auckland, mid-80s version, and there's no other cars on the road actually driving. It's basically a ghost town. And then he goes over the North Shore to near where his research centre is, where he works, and finds wreckage of a building where a jetliner has crashed into the building and everything's full of fumes and smoke and gas.
Wait, funky lollipop alert.
Briggy!
I know that laugh.
Yeah.
Hola, mi amor. How are you?
Welcome, girl. How you doing?
I'm okay. I'm great. Sorry to bust in, but here I am. Please continue.
You're not busting in. You're part of the gang.
Welcome.
We're all waiting for you to bust in.
Yeah.
Wait.
Justin is talking about a post-apocalyptic film here. Continue,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay, so The Quiet Earth. So when he sees this crash plane into this warehouse, he wonders what's happened here. No explanation, no signs of any dead bodies or anything like that. He then goes to his research centre, which is near a satellite dish. I think it's supposed to be the Warkworth satellite dish, which we know well if we're from Auckland. And when he goes into this underground research centre, he finds his boss, Perrin, who's slumped over dead at his desk. We're not quite sure why. And when he looks at recordings, he works out that this project he's been working on, Zach's been working on with Perrin, which is called Project Flashlight. And the idea behind Project Flashlight is to set up a wireless global energy grid So it's research done in New Zealand, but apparently based on mysterious United States funding. And he puts two and two together and wonders whether this disappearance of everybody else on Earth, apparently, or in his country, is linked somehow to the completion of this Project Flashlight, because the records show that it was stated to be operational as of 6:12 a.m., which is where the clocks had stopped at 6:12 a.m. He then he realizes, well, basically travels around Auckland trying to find other people, cannot find anyone. It then becomes a bit like a Bill Murray-esque type Groundhog Day, where he realizes he can basically do whatever he wants. He's looking for other people, and so he's going through a bit of a mindfuck about being the only person around. But at the same time, he takes advantage of it by moving out of his crummy digs into a mansion, and just starts walking around in a bathrobe inside this mansion with champagne. In one strange scene, he drinks a champagne flute with an egg inside it that he'd cracked into the champagne flute. He drives into a shopping mall, and which is deserted, obviously, and helps himself to an expensive tuxedo. But he then starts to oscillate as time goes on between sort of despair and elation. He in the front yard of this mansion, he puts up all these cardboard cutouts of famous figures like Queen Elizabeth, Hitler, the Pope, and then he speaks to them from a balcony, talking about how this research that he's been involved in has created some sort of calamity, at least in his country, but possibly worldwide, and declares himself as the president of this quiet Earth. And then he starts to go a bit crazy and starts wearing a woman's dress as he wanders around the place, grabs a gun, a rifle, which was on the premises as well, goes into a big cathedral and starts firing the gun at the effigy, at the bust of Jesus Christ inside the church. And then he gets this big excavator and basically trashes a gas station by wrecking it. And accidentally, the excavator runs over a pram, right? So he panics and thinks maybe he's crushed the baby's pram with a baby inside it. He quickly gets down and goes through the blankets and realizes that although the pram's a bit crushed, there's no baby inside of it, because everybody else has disappeared, of course. He puts the gun inside his mouth as though he's about to commit suicide, and just then there's another explosion as more of the gas station falls apart, and he stops what he's doing and suddenly realizes, what am I doing? And from that moment on, he becomes a bit more sane. He finds another mansion which is near the seaside, moves into that, and then he finally encounters another person, where this younger woman, Joanne, appears at the door, pointing a gun at him. But then she says, she seems to realize he's no danger to her, and she's relieved to find another person herself. And she says, "Don't worry, the gun's not real. It's just a fake gun." So I think she's a nurse or works at a hospital, and the two of them team up, and they're traveling around trying to find anyone else who may be alive. And eventually, they accidentally, in a township just south of Auckland, they come across an army guy called APES, who's a Maori guy. And although they at first conflict with him, he soon realizes that they're okay, and he also is relieved to find two other people who are still alive and still around. Then there's a bit of a love triangle develops between the three of them, but it appears that although the main character Zach has feelings for Joanne, she actually prefers APES. APES becomes a bit hostile towards Zach because he finds out that Zach was involved in the research which may have led to the worldwide apocalypse or calamity. But eventually that resolves itself, and they come up with a plan to blow up the research center, because Zach becomes convinced that the calamity that happened a few weeks earlier, called the effect, the global effect called the effect, whereby everybody disappeared, is about to happen again the next day, and it may this time destroy the entire planet. So they basically find some gelatine explosives at a warehouse and drive a truck up to near where the research center is. And basically they can't decide who's going to drive it in because there's too much radiation near the research lab. Zach claims that he's going to go back to Auckland to find a remote control device so that the truck could be remote controlled into the research facility. But he actually lies to Joanne and Arpy and decides just to drive it in himself rather than going back to Auckland, thereby destroying the research facility at precisely the time of 6:12 a.m. when the effect is about to happen once more. So, major spoiler, but Zach obviously perishes at the time. And then the ending of the film is that he wakes up on a beach somewhere with these amazing cloud formations, and it looks like a ringed planet like Saturn coming up over the horizon. So it's not really explained where he is at this time. But the secret as to why there's only 3 people who have survived is that they work out towards the end of the film that each of them was on the point of death at 6:12 a.m. 3 weeks ago when the effect first happened. For Zach, he'd realised that he'd created a potential catastrophe by working on this project, and had decided to commit suicide by taking a huge overdose of pills, so that his suicide would reveal to the world that this research was being used for corrupt purposes and was a potential global risk. So at the time he was about to commit suicide, the effect occurred with this Project Flashlight. And similarly for Arpy, he was in a fight where he was about to be drowned in a river at the time at 6:12 a.m. when the effect occurred. And strangely with Joanne, she was about to be killed by electric hairdryer at 6:12 a.m. So all 3 of them were on the point of death when the effect kicked in at that particular time, and therefore they were people who were remaining on Earth, whereas everyone else had disappeared. So yeah, I thought it was an interesting.
So that's why he survived at the end, then.
Well, he died a second time. I was reading an interview last night as to what they intended by that, and they basically said, well, it could have been because the director, Jeff Murphy, who's also well known in New Zealand, was a lapsed Catholic. Maybe it was intended to be purgatory. He'd woken up in purgatory, having died a second time. Because Zach died twice. He died when he took the overdose of pills a few weeks earlier. Mm-hmm. Then he died again when the truck exploded at the research facility when they tried to destroy the grid, which was about to kick in with at that time with the second effect. So what I would say is that it was an interesting plot. It was certainly watchable. There was no moment at all when I was bored with it. It did remind me a bit of Bill Murray and Groundhog Day in terms of the different emotions that the main character went through as a result of sort of being stuck in this. In Bill Murray's case, it was a time warp, but in the case of Zach, it was more like Will Smith in I Am Legend, in that there was no one else around. He was, as far as he knew, for half the film, he was the only person on Earth. So he oscillated between let's take advantage of this fact versus being completely despairing of this fact at the same time. And the absolute freedom that created, because he was the only person in the film for the first half of the film. So there's not much dialogue for the first half of the film, except when he's talking to himself or recording an announcement. At the start of the film, he actually goes to the lengths of putting out a radio broadcast saying where he lives, and if anyone can please get in contact with him, this is the phone number. And he puts up massive banners in the deserted city area with that same information. So it's sort of a psychological effect in terms of how someone's psychology changes when they're, for the first half of the film anyway, when he's the only person around and doesn't know if there's anyone else out there. And it's also got a really good musical score, and a lot of the film has New Zealand Symphony Orchestra. So the score was really good, actually, the music score throughout it. I enjoyed it because I was looking for places I know, because most of it was shot around Auckland. So there's a nice scene where they're sitting at a mansion, himself and Joanne, when he first meets her on this grassy lawn, and you can see the bay, Hauraki Gulf in the background with Rangitoto, the island out on the water. So, and also when they go into downtown Auckland, which is the 1985 version, of course, it looks quite small and miniature given what it is now, but completely deserted. But I was looking for landmarks that I know now or from that time as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't checked it out, I'd recommend it because it's quite short as well. It's about 90 minutes, I think. And as I say, it keeps your interest throughout the entire film. And it has become a cult classic, not just in New Zealand, I think, but internationally. It's got a touch of the Peter Jackson brain dead about it, but not just completely not as zany as that. It's a more serious film, but
you asked me if I had seen it, and actually I said no, but actually I have seen like the first half of it. I do remember all those details about Operation Flashlight or whatever, and all those things he did, but I didn't get to the part where he meets another person though. So I forgot why I didn't finish it. But have you seen it, Chuck?
No. It sounds very similar to in some ways to this film from, I think, the early 80s called Population One, which is kind of like a apocalyptic survivor musical one-man show. Started Tomata Duplanty, who used to sing lead for a band called the Screamers. Fun movie.
I thought it was Samata Duplanty. No, I'm kidding.
It might be. We could go back and forth on that.
Briggy, are you familiar with this film?
No, actually, I didn't even get the name.
The Quiet Earth. So it sounds like a New Zealand take on Richard Matheson's I Am Legend.
No, I've never heard of it, but I will certainly look into it now. It sounds really
definitely parts of it reminded what you're describing are a lot like what Vincent Price goes through in Last Man on Earth, and of course Mr. Heston in Omega Man.
Yeah, definitely.
And for that matter, 28 Days Later, which is admittedly by the writer a direct steal from the Omega Man. I mean, he admitted it cheerfully. I like the movie. I'm just saying it's refreshing when someone actually admits that they stole it instead of
I think a lot of these movies like sort of prey on the fear of loneliness and people who are afraid to be alone. People who are afraid to live alone, even travel or eat alone. Basically, the fear of being single. And
I do it all alone, man.
I'm sure you do. I heard the internet told me you do it all alone. So
I do. I mean, I'm not saying it's ideal, but it's just the way it is.
Right, exactly. But some people who are brave enough to say, you know what, I'm just going to do this thing alone. But I think these movies kind of prey on that that fear, and I think they do it effectively. So yeah, really good.
Yeah, because you see it in the relief that they all feel when they find other people. When Joanne and Zach find each other, they're both relieved, even though they don't fully trust each other initially. But the relief overcomes that. And same when they find Arpie, who at first is threatening towards Zach, but then when he sees that Zach has a companion, this other woman, which I think Arpie is attracted to straight away. He says, "Oh, okay, a team. We've got a team, So
that kind of reminds me of a few movies. Also, that The World of Flesh and the Devil with Harry Belafonte, where you have the three characters, and there's kind of maybe a romantic jealousy tension, and of course, because of the time it came out, since one of them's black, there's a thing there. And then there's another movie that's not as well made that I saw for the first time not long ago. I think from the early 60s that Tim Tolbert put me on to. And I bet it's one, at least one of y'all would have heard of it. It's like an old school sci-fi movie, but it's actually better than I thought it was going to be, but it's a similar idea. A couple of people are left alive, and then it takes them a while to find people. And of course, almost all of these stories came out after I Am Legend. That novel came out in the 50s. But George Romero wrote The Night of Anubis story. as a riff on, not a steal exactly, but a riff on I Am Legend. And that, of course, became Night of the Living Dead. But that echoes through the sequels, where you find the lone isolated characters and how they're surviving, and then what happens when they encounter other humans. It happens in all three of the first Dead movies. Now, I mean, in Land of the Dead, there's a lot more humans around because they've created this faux community that's supposed to be one last vain attempt at preserving capitalism and the caste system, even though it's long since been destroyed. And
you can't keep teaching old dog new tricks, right? I mean,
Have you seen that one, Land of the Dead?
No, I haven't, but just listening to what you're saying in the premise, and people who are in a desperate situation still trying to create a sense of what they thought was normal instead of remaking the world in a much more egalitarian place, since they have to survive and rely on one another. They're still dealing with a caste system that's completely inappropriate for their situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I won't bog down this episode with talking about Land of the Dead. We'll talk about it another time. But it like the previous three Romeros, it is commenting on the zeitgeist of when it was made, in the sense even that the guy Kaufman, who owns this Fiddler's Green, which is basically this giant skyscraper that he has paid these people in barter or whatever. He's revived money as a viable system when it had lost all value, because that's all in our head anyway. It doesn't have
a construct.
Money doesn't have any value.
Right. It kind of reminds me a little bit, that last piece was like a Twilight episode. And also a lot of the Twilight episodes, not a lot, but quite a few of them did also have the same premise of like one person. Like I remember Elizabeth McGovern was in one, and
yeah, they wake up and
right. And then the guy who wanted to trade these gold bars for water, he was on this sort of planet, didn't realize he was on Earth, and the people were like, this is garbage, and just threw the gold bars away because they had no value. So
right. Well, there's that great line in Dawn of the Dead where they, hoard all the stuff in the mall, and they go to the bank and they just empty the money out, and they look at each other like, this is ridiculous. And Peter's like, you never know. But in Land of the Dead, Dennis Hopper plays Kaufman, and Kaufman, George Romero based him on Donald Rumsfeld, who he hated with a passion.
Well, there are no knowns and unknown unknowns.
Right.
There you go.
Because it's like, this is what Rumsfeld would do. He would, like, to the dying breath, would try to preserve this horrible system.
Got to go to war with the army you have, not the army you want.
Right.
Obviously, I know all of the Rumsfeld quotes, so there you go.
Well, on that beautiful note, we're going to continue with the alt science fiction films fun, and it's going to be turned over to you, Briggy.
Oh, fabulous. Okay, so here's the deal. So I wanted to do sort of like a new and an old, and the new one isn't sort of alt, but it did not get the love I thought it deserved. So at the time, this is Equilibrium. I don't know if you all are familiar with that movie, but I thought it was, yeah, I was really into it. I will not lie. I mean, when I first saw it, when it first came out, Christian Bale is in it. Sean Bean, that was in, what was he in?
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings,
yep,
but he was also in the
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, right? Exactly, yeah.
Everyone was in Game of Thrones, though.
Right, everybody with an English accent. Emma Watts was in it. So it was like Taye Diggs was in it. So that was really, that's kind of the lineup. It's the premise of it being in this sort of dystopian authoritarian time. And it's sort of a crossover between 1984, Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451. I sort of felt a little Soylent Green in there at the time as well, which I think is kind of a great movie.
The classics.
If you haven't seen that, but it's kind of a, and then there's also levels of The Matrix in there as well, which I thought was really well done, where the Christian Bale character plays a guy named Proctor. He's sort of like this Judge Dredd, if you know Judge Dredd sort of thing. And they are designed to they're real people, but the time that we find ourselves in this movie is that there is the total authoritarian movement has taken over, and now everyone in this time has decided, well, or the leaders have decided, we don't need emotion, we don't need love, we don't need anything like that. And what they're basically trying to do is rewrite history. They've come up with a drug that people have to inject daily. Wow, that sounds familiar. Have to be injected daily. And what this drug does, it just sort of removes all of your emotions. It just flattens you. And it makes you extremely compliant. Everyone is living in this very sort of uniformed type way. And even if you don't take this shot, people will find out and they will come for you and either make you take the shot or they will kill you. So those are your options. But because people have been taking it for so long.
Sounds kind of familiar.
Right, right. But because people have been taking this for so long, it's so integrated into the society, people don't no longer question. They don't even know that they're not feeling, because what they're not feeling is what they think is normal. So yeah, I mean, if that's a thing, but I totally can relate to that. Proctor, who is like this, I would say he's sort of like the head Zen master of this particular unit, which is an enforcement unit that goes around fighting the resistance, that refuses to take these drugs and still wants to listen to opera and beautiful music and fall in love. And they want to feel these people are basically like the cancer of that society. And there's this elite team that goes around hunting them and killing them and destroying everything that's beautiful and lovely and wonderful about being human. And so that's what really made me feel it was sort of this crossover of all of these amazing books that have been written about how humans need to create their own world, chart their own destiny, and find love and be loved. So what happens is the Christian Bale character forgets to take his shot one day and starts to feel something. And it was really interesting and new because he had never felt this way before. Well, he goes to bust up this ring that he got a lead on, and as he destroys them, kills them, burns them, whatever he does with them, he hears something behind a door and he opens it and it's like a puppy. And this little puppy kind of pulls at his heartstrings. It's sort of like a John Wick moment there where it's like, oh my God, it's like a puppy. If you haven't seen John Wick, it's sort of like, oh,
I have
killed my dog, I'm going to destroy the world. Okay. So
it was my cat. I'd do it.
You would lose it. You would lose it. So he starts to feel. He starts to kind of feel, but he then decides, I'm not going to take this medicine anymore. But he still has to pretend to want to destroy, all that's good in the world. And he finds these people who are living underground. And instead of turning them in, he says, look, I'm going to help you. And he meets Emma Watson, who had living behind this false wall, has a treasure trove of like the Mona Lisa is back there, and name whatever else is like Degas and Renoirs and Van Goghs are back there, and it's like all of this amazing work that they rescued because they understood the value and the history of it, and what they wanted to do was rewrite history. This society was being run by this man called the Father. Like, wow, that's original. And just like in 1984, right? In 1984, there are like these big jumbotrons of just a head talking to you, telling you, you must sit down, you must obey.
Like Zardoz.
Sort of, right, exactly. So it really, it takes a turn when Christian Bale character finds out that, this person has been dead for years, and that if these are just basically AI images, and they tell it what to say, and the people comply. This is the way they keep everybody compliant and not basically freaking out because their leader that they feel is real, that keeps them basically feeling this level of equilibrium, which is basically the name of the movie, they would have a hard time dealing with that reality if they had that kind of shift.
Pretty
I don't want to
realistic.
give, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want to give like too much of the movie away because
Sounds very
there's
timely.
so
Yeah.
much involved. And and the coolest part about it is because it has sort of like this crossover Matrix element to it. The Christian Bale is like this sort of master. It's there. These katas, like in martial arts, they have these katas, and then there are like these things called gun katas. So he's a master at these gun katas, where he has these guns. It's a mixture of martial arts as he's shooting people, and he's just super badass. And but as all dystopian movies, it's always brought down by one person. And I don't want to get into that too deeply, but I would say, look at this movie. You would totally enjoy it. It's a lot of action. It's not too bloody, but it really does tell a story about people who fall in love, and people who want to love, and people who want to resist being told what to do, resist authoritarianism. It's very timely, like you said. So I would say watch it, enjoy it, love it. I think you'll thank me later.
Have you seen that one, Chuck?
No, I have not. I know I've spoken to at least a couple of friends who swear by it, and they thought it was great.
Yeah.
But
it definitely came out. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Very much like they were very turned on to the idea of like the programming and the drug programming and everything else, and
right.
Just dystopian films around that time were just huge. And there were a lot of them, and
and I think the action mixed with that, it definitely was part of that wave. There was a wave of post Matrix films. The Matrix influenced a lot of stuff. But what's interesting about the Matrix is one of the movies that people hailed as a condemned, I don't know, as a ripoff of the Matrix was called The 13th Floor. I don't know if y'all have seen that. But the 13th Floor, though, this is the irony of it. The 13th Floor is based on a novel that was published decades ago. And it was originally adapted by Rainer Werner Fassbinder for a German television called World on a Wire miniseries.
Oh, wow.
Now, the truth is the Matrix ripped off that novel. I guess it's a good thing Kaylin's not here because she worships the Wachowskis, and she would probably curse me with a voodoo doll for saying that they ripped anything off. But sorry. It's facts. Facts are facts.
Everything is influenced by something.
Well, there's influences, and then there's levels of there's levels.
But I mean, there was also some element of Blade in there. I mean, it was just all black, very slick, lots of martial arts, So
the film that influenced a film that I think influenced Blade and The Matrix and X-Men with the whole black leather modern was.
I know what you're gonna say.
The Crow.
Okay. You went even further back. Yeah, definitely.
The Crow changed the game, man.
Yes.
I mean, and another plot that reminds me of is Logan's Run, the novel.
That was amazing. I thought you were going to say, what is that movie, Resident Evil? What was that movie?
That was the video game one. But that was also influenced. Yeah. Underworld kind of.
Underworld. That was what I meant to say. Underworld, not Resident Evil, but Underworld.
Underworld was influenced by Blade for sure.
That's Blade. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. Easily. Yeah, Logan's Run was just it just was a whole other. Just a whole other world that was it really spooked people out. Even the movie was just kind of, I mean, if you look at it today, you may think, oh, this is some campy shit, but no.
Well, the movie is campy by today, but that novel holds up fabulously. I knew the guys who co-wrote the novel. I knew him pretty well before they passed. My then best friend met them when he was kind of networking with the sci-fi horror community, and William F. Nolan, who created the character Logan, and then George Clayton Johnson, who co-wrote the first novel with him. The two sequels Nolan wrote alone, but they weren't 100% happy with the movie. But they had both written for the Twilight Zone. They were part
Right,
of the
right.
California Sorcerers group of writers like Ray Bradbury and Earl Hamner Jr. and young Harlan Ellison and all those kind of Charles Beaumont. Richard Matheson.
But the actors in that movie were just of the time, like Michael York was in that. Was it?
Yeah, and they had Ginny Agutter.
Farrah Fawcett was in it. I'm sorry, what?
Ginny Agutter was the Jessica.
Yes.
She was hot. She was hot, literally hot looking, but she was also very popular with people because she'd been in Walkabout, and then and Logan's Run is one of the first American films she was in, where she's sexually mature, and then she was, after that she's an American Werewolf in London. But yeah, when I was in junior high, everybody had a crush on her, or maybe younger than junior high. But yeah, Farrah Fawcett was in it before Charlie's Angels, but after Myra Breckinridge.
Oh yes.
A favorite of mine, though most everyone hates it.
Wasn't there also a Logan's Run TV series, maybe, as well?
Yeah, Gregory Harrison, though it departs even further from the book than the movie. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. It just Kay Lenz, I think, was Jessica.
Yeah.
And they met some cheesy android played by Donald Moffat, and I never got that whole.
I felt it was like a money grab. They was using the popularity of.
Oh, it was a money grab. But on the plus side, the movie was so popular, it did spawn a Marvel comic book by three creators I really liked growing up and still like: David Anthony Kraft, who I knew actually later, who's also no longer with us. And it was early art by George Perez, who went on to become huge doing the Teen Titans, and inked by Klaus Janson, who went on to become huge doing Daredevil and Dark Knight. And they made a cool combination. They adapted the movie, and then they kind of continued the story a little, and then it got canceled. But that was a fun series. That was one of Marvel's better spent. Marvel was trying to buy everything and adapt everything, and somehow prove to you that it all took place in the Marvel universe. Well, obviously it didn't, but that's the way things were back then. So thank you, Briggy.
You're so welcome.
Do you or anyone else have a comment about this topic? Not the topic that we're covering in general, but this equilibrium and adjacent.
I like your I like your feedback.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
I'd like more feedback.
You want more feedback
from these guys? Yeah.
Oh, okay, certainly.
Well, it certainly sounds interesting. I haven't seen it, Equilibrium, but I've heard of it, and Emma Watson's always good. So I think because I like dystopian type movies anyway, it might be something I'd try and check out.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
I think if people are into those types of movies, what we're doing now, this little collection of movies, it's really good, because sometimes you don't know what to watch, and sometimes you really don't want people spoiling everything. I know, like, I would want to watch maybe 2 movies that are similarly themed. So maybe I would watch Equilibrium, and I watch one of the movies you suggested, and just have a real cool chill night and enjoy some old sci-fi, or some movies that just weren't given the sunlight they should have, which I think this movie should have. I mean, Christian Bale is really good. He's like a really good Batman. He's like my favorite.
He's
Batman.
Always good, even in terrible movies.
He's really amazing, certainly.
He's just a committed actor,
I mean, he's so angry on set, and then he's got like that very
he's a perfectionist
accent, and then he kicks into an American accent, which just goes into how good he is at holding that accent. So yeah.
Oh yeah. He's great. I still love American Psycho, actually.
Oh yes, definitely.
Where he patterned the character's accent after Rod Serling, which I thought was funny.
Oh really?
Yeah, if you just listen to it and think about Rod Serling, and it's hilarious.
I can hear that.
I thought the soundtrack was really good too in American Psycho. It was a really interesting book to adapt to film, sort of like the movie Being There. I don't want to go into that, but like
I think the movie's better. I know I don't say this much, but the movie American Psycho, I think, is a lot better in the book.
In some respects, yeah, I would agree.
The book wallowed in its own excess, which of course I'm not against, as you guys know, doing an extreme film symposium series. But in that case, Bret Easton Ellis has great ideas, but he he climbs a little bit too far up his own ass a lot in most of his stuff. For my life, just my take.
Not holding it against you. I mean, it is what it is.
I mean, I wouldn't mind rewatching Lesson Zero, the movie, but I don't know if I can try to read the book again. Mainly just early Robert Downey Jr.'s. I've seen it once, but it's been years and years ago. And now Robert Downey Jr. probably was doing all that excessive stuff back in the 80s.
I think Equilibrium sounds quite topical too, with some of its themes about forced medication in order to fit in with the rest of society and that kind of, not making any political comments or anything, but
right.
There's aspects of that to do with the particularly the way things went down under with COVID the last few years or a few years ago.
They went down bad up here too, up over.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy, but right. But I will say that just like I would say in real life, in the movie, they even had like their children were basically ratting the parents out. Like if they did not take their medication, they would be like, "Did you take your medication today? Like I will report you." And so it was like the children were on par with the adults, and the adults were just frightened of the children and were like, "Yeah, I'll take it." Like, like just, so it's very much like very topical in terms of like I said, like things happening today, how people are canceling each other, and there's elements of that in the movie. So when you look at it, you're going to just go, this does seem like we're pretty close to this. So start getting your bunkers ready. Start burying your Rembrandts.
Well, as Hawkwind said, Robert Calvert in Hawkwind, welcome to the future.
Yes, the future is here.
Sorry.
Hi, you've been watching Deep Images. I'm Henry Covert, your host. This is Bergie Williams and C.F. Roberts, two of our most amazing panelists. And we've been talking about an incredible series here. We do these series sessions every so often. We break them into individual episodes. So we wanted to kind of give you a segue and let you know what you've just watched and what you can look forward to. So just want to remind you, thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe, and support the channel any way you can. Do you guys have anything to say?
Yeah, like, subscribe, come back, see us. We don't bite. Type.
Do you like that? We like that. Let me tell you something. Leave some comments.
Hell yeah.
Leave something in the chat. If you like us, talk to us. If you don't like us, talk to us. We want to hear from you.
All right. Y'all have a good evening. Thanks for watching.